Joining me right now to discuss all of this is Igor Novikov. He's a former advisor to President Zelenskyy. Thank you so much for joining us, Igor.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt at all, and we've done it on this show as well, you know, we kind of push Ukraine to the, news in briefs rather than to the main subject matter because of what's been happening in the Middle East. It's gone off a lot of the front pages, but keeps bouncing back when, unfortunately, there is a change and a turn of events in Ukraine. And we have seen, Ukrainian forces giving up a key strategic town to the Russian forces. We are seeing ongoing issues with supplies of vital weaponry to Ukraine. I suppose 2 years on, almost to the day, how do you think this war is going? Are you getting enough help so that you don't lose, but are you not getting enough help so that you can win?
Well, Julia, first of all, I mean, let me begin with the good news. We're still here, 2 years on, so I think that's the good news. I think the situation on the front line at the moment is fully reflective of, that difference between promises made and promises fulfilled. Ukraine, yes, Ukraine is not in the position we hoped to be. We had hoped to be like a year ago, but this is due to weapon shortages. And I think, the Western partners need to figure out what they want out of, this whole situation, because as you rightly said, the situation in Israel with Hamas has kind of moved Ukraine out of the spotlight. But at the same time, I mean, it's not only Russia, Ukraine here, at war here. We get shot at with North Korean ballistic missiles. Iran is providing drones and ballistic missiles. Basically, it's the West fighting against, Iran, North Korea, Russia, Hamas, Houthis, whoever, okay? And to be honest, if, this tactic of distracting your attention, diverting it away from what matters works, then, you begin to lose.
Yeah, indeed. And in terms of you say the promised help and the actual fulfilled help, we know certain countries, Germany dragged their feet for many years, the Eastern European nations, having lived under Soviet rule, knew exactly what they needed to do to help a neighbouring country. But Germany certainly dragged their feet, and then sort of got together. Denmark's been great. Britain, we've been around that. We've been helping to train Ukrainian forces and pushing for things. But ultimately, the main aid is coming from military, and indeed money is coming from the US. Big concerns about Congress holding some of that money up. Big concerns if Donald Trump gets into power, basically saying he'd end the Ukraine war on day one of his presidency. How would he do that? Well, presumably by not giving any aid to Ukraine. And Russia, he would expect, I suppose, at that point.
I actually have an answer to that, if you want. So I think, what Donald Trump is doing here and what some actors like Tucker Carlson, for example, are doing here, they're manipulating the public saying they're going to end the war. But, there are three different verbs we can use. We can win this war, we can freeze this war, or we can lose this war. You can end it in 10 minutes by losing it.
Yeah.
But that's not going to help anyone because, Putin has already transformed Russia into, Stalinist kind of version of the Soviet Union. So the only way for him to survive in power, the only way for their economy to keep working is, the military rails, the military path that they've taken. So they would need to keep fighting. So if Ukraine loses, they move on to somebody else like the Baltics. And can you tell me that you're 100% certain that Article 5 of the, the NATO is going to work here, because I'm not certain.
I'm not at all, and I'm pretty sure that the population of the Baltic states are not sure about that at all either. People say, well, one Russian steel-capped toe to boot into a NATO country, and that will trigger Article 5. I think we can see already that actually there's been a lot of weakness and division on the Western side. But this is the thing, isn't it? In terms of what actually happens now, the Ukrainian people have not gone through what they have gone through to say, oh, well, OK, we give up then. They're going to keep fighting. There's no doubt at all about that. But they need the weaponry to be able to defeat, not just hold back Russian forces. Bearing in mind, this was supposed to be a few days, a few weeks. The expectation for Vladimir Putin was the tanks would roll in, Zelenskyy would get on a private jet, disappear off, take some money with him, sort of thing Putin would do, and they would take over Ukraine and return it to the motherland of Russia, in their view. That hasn't happened. I think everyone has been pretty surprised by the fortitude of the Ukrainians and of President Zelenskyy, and indeed of the West in the end. But in terms of getting the weaponry, what is it that you need that you're not getting? Because there's still a lot of talk about the need for the long-range military, just the sheer amount of ammunition in these battles in the trenches, but also, of course, the fighter jets.
I would say, there are four main categories of weaponry that we need. First of all, we need air defenses, desperately need air defenses, because what happened in that strategic town of Avdiivka, as you said, was, the overwhelming air superiority of Russia. We have no means of taking down their planes, in large numbers. Therefore, they can literally destroy a city, and then there's no point in holding it. So air defenses is one. Secondly, we need long-range missiles, because the only positive that we can take from the situation today is that Putin is losing his Black Sea fleet to a country with no navy. He's losing his air force to a country with hardly any air force. So therefore, that kind of asymmetric approach works, and we need long-range weaponry for that. The third thing we need is any innovative weaponry, because this war is very reminiscent of World War I and probably World War II. But in fact, this is the new generation of war, and drones, FPV drones, suicide drones, long-range drones, any robotics, any autonomous weaponry, that works miracles, especially against the country that's using cannon fodder to advance. I'm talking about Russia here. And fourthly, we need like basic supplies, because Ukraine unfortunately is at war, and producing weaponry any weaponry production is vulnerable to those cruise missiles that keep flying every 10 days or so, and we're expecting some tonight, to be honest. So hopefully not, but that happens. But let me just explain to you with one analogy really quickly. What's happening here is that we have an armed robbery. The thugs are already in one of the bedrooms, and don't trust any Western politician who tells you, like, let's make a deal with them. Let's give them that bedroom, okay? The kids can stay in the next room. They just promise they won't go further into the house. That's unlikely to happen. That's what's been promised to Putin after Crimea, and look where we are here today. And the ultimate enemy for him is not us. We're just something that's standing in the way. The ultimate enemy is you.
This is the thing. So many people say this is a faraway war. What does it matter? Ukraine and the West, the EU, NATO baited Russia. They'll make excuse after excuse, the conspiracy theorists online. But at the end of the day, these are independent people of an independent sovereign state who have had tanks roll in, mass murder, torture, rape used as tools of war, children stolen, taken to Russia on huge scales in their hundreds of thousands. This is
reminiscent of Hamas, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. This is happening on a scale. And there's been lots of, I think, a warm welcome to the Ukrainian, particularly the mothers and children who came over to the UK. I know many families who've had people staying in them who've said their families have gone back. Tell us just a bit, what is life like for most people in Ukraine right now? What is day-to-day life like living under this?
Well, it's very black and white, because on one hand, the further you go away from the front line, and, we kind of trying to keep our sanity. So, there's a 50-50 divide of every day between, the war and the life outside the war. So, if you go to Lviv or if you go to Kiev, you might get that, illusion that there's nothing happening. And then every night, even in cities like Lviv and Kiev and everything, you have cruise missiles, you have North Korean ballistic missiles, you have those Iranian suicide drones. So, people are still dying, even 1,000 kilometers away from the front line. On the front lines, it's hell on earth. I mean, that's the only way to describe it. I mean, I've seen that with my own eyes, and it's horrific. So the way Putin is working, it's basically scorched earth policy. So the only way for them to advance is to literally destroy everything to the ground, to the point of not having any initiative of holding scorched earth.
Yeah.
So that's what he's doing. So every city, every town, every village is a mass grave of Ukrainians. And there's no signs he's stopping. North Korea is helping him. Iran is helping him. I think we're going to see a pretty solid axis of evil forming. And then the West is just kind of standing there and hypothetically thinking, maybe we should negotiate.
Yeah.
Well, go negotiate. I mean, Trump's tried it with Kim. Iran is still there. On the verge of having nuclear weapons. Kim has nuclear weapons. And those people have shown you what their intentions are and who the enemy is. And, our political indecisiveness could cost us, our representative democracies in the West.
Yeah,
our way of life, our
and I
liberty.
agree with you. He won't stop at Ukraine. He really will not. And all the Eastern European and Baltic nations know that, and they're the ones who are stepping up right now, more than perhaps others in the West. Igor, I so appreciate you joining us. So we hope you and your family stay safe. Igor Novikov, former advisor to President Zelenskyy there. Philip Ingram, still with me in the studio, listening intently to that. He's an incredible communicator there. And I do really worry. War weariness in the West is an issue. We're not willing to give up our own men or women. We're not willing to spend much money. The price of fuel goes up and heating our homes. We go, oh, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it?
Hugely worth it. This is the single biggest threat to our day-to-day way of life. That's happening at the moment.
Why? Well, people will say, well, hold on a minute, it's happening in Ukraine. We're miles away, Philip.
We're above Gaza and everything else. The threat.
Why is it a threat to us?
The threat that comes from Putin. Well, we've seen the energy hikes. We've seen his influence on politics that are going on. And in this election year, it's going to be enormous. He won't stop at Ukraine. The Ukrainian people are fighting and putting their lives on the line to keep us safe. If he gets through there, we will be mobilised. Those attacks will be coming into our cities across Europe and into the UK. People going about their daily business today will not be able to because there will be missiles hitting buildings in London.
People think that's sort of pie in the sky stuff. They don't. It's not. You're a military man.
I've spent 40 years looking at this sort of stuff. This is the first time ever I can see clear paths to a third world war. And the thing that's stopping it at the moment is the bravery of the Ukrainian men and women that are on the front line that are trying to hold Putin back.
Yeah, and indeed, I mean, and the financial cost to us is a very small price to pay compared to
tiny compared to what it would be.
What it would be. And it's very interesting, isn't it? The other countries are closer on the front line, especially those Baltic states, which are basically surrounded by Russia. They absolutely get it.
As
They
does
do.
Poland.
Yeah, indeed.